When you play Forge of Empires and are building out your city, there are some items that just about every player needs, from ones that finish productions to ones that help you get the most out of your buildings. Starting with the most important, aid kits. There are two types: self-aid kits that motivate or polish any one building in your city, and mass self-aid kits that motivate or polish every building at once. These are critical to maximizing your city's productions, as nearly every building requires an aid to produce its full list of items, including forge points, goods, fragments, and more. As your city grows, it's likely that the aid you get from your friends, guild, and neighborhood will simply not be enough to keep all your buildings aided, which is where these items come into play. To assemble a mass self-aid kit, you will need 30 of its fragments. At the time of making this video, the best building for it is the Joyful Nutcracker Guardhouse from the winter events, which gives 3 fragments in a 4-tile space. The Diaducts are better per tile and don't need roads, but they tend to be much harder to get. The Regal Squirrel Halls are also a good alternative to the Nutcracker Guardhouses, and they even provide fragments of some of the other items we'll talk about today, but they are rather large. If you're instead looking for self-aid kits, you need only 15 fragments to assemble one. If you do have a little patience to wait for the St. Patrick's Day event, the Sacred Tree of Patience is very handy to have, and as it is only 1 by 1, it is easy to squeeze in anywhere where you've got some extra space with your roads. However, if that event is not near, the Neo Menagerie from the Quantum Incursions is always available in the item shop for that feature. The next set of items on our list are the finished production items. There's a lot of different variations of these, but ultimately they allow you to instantly finish the production of certain types of buildings. These are very handy for completing quests and events, or just getting the most out of your blue galaxy. The first we'll focus on are the Finish Special Production items. These can be used to finish nearly any special building, basically any building that is not unlocked on the tech tree. However, there are some cases where the use of these items is not allowed, such as the main guild battle rounds or quantum incursions rewards, which is noted when you hover over the building. You need 30 fragments to assemble each one of these, and there are a good number of buildings providing them. Importantly, I have only included buildings that I think you can get. Old Gold League buildings, for example, are left off of this list. The most important ones on this list, in my opinion, are the Emberfanged Totem and Jester's Stage. Fragments of these buildings can be produced by other buildings in case you want to get a lot. If that's not a constraint, you will likely be able to pick up some of the higher items on this list in limited quantities from item shops during future events. Moving on to finished supply items, these are extremely useful for completing quests asking you to finish productions. Whether a mini challenge or just an event quest, it can cut off a lot of time spent waiting. My favorites are the Finish All Supply production items, as they work for any production duration. Each only needs 15 fragments, and there really aren't too many options for them. The Neo Clock Tower is going to be the best building for these hands down, but the Dracker Pyre is also a good option, but a little bit harder to get, as it gives fragments of a few other items as well. Of course, there are other supply rush items other than those that have fully complete productions. For example, 6-hour supply rushes can be provided by the Holly Hauler from the winter event. I haven't listed these here as I find those to be less useful, but just be aware that there are other options. The black sheep of the finished production item family is the Humble Finished Goods production item. You can only use these on goods buildings, which greatly limits their value. However, when the occasional mini challenge requires goods productions, these come in handy to complete the quests faster. They're also potentially useful for aging up through the space ages, as you can use them to gather special goods from synthesizers faster. Finished goods production items require 30 fragments to assemble, and there are a surprisingly large number of buildings that produce fragments of these. The first one that doesn't require an ascended upgrade is the Usagi Bunbori Gate from the Wildlife event. They're small, roadless buildings and can be squeezed into a corner of your city where they slowly produce the handful of finished goods items you may need. As you're remodeling your city to squeeze in some better buildings, you may find yourself using the next item, store building kits. These allow you to remove special buildings from your city and place them in your inventory, which is a better alternative to just deleting those buildings. Often, older event buildings get powerful upgrades later on, making it a good idea to keep a few older buildings saved in your inventory. You only need 15 fragments to assemble each store building item. There's only a few buildings providing fragments of these, with my favorite and the best by a landslide being the Monster Ranch's Nightmare boxes from the Halloween event. With their tiny size and being roadless, you can squeeze them in anywhere to build up a stock of store building items for your next renovation. With the only buildings producing fragments of these showing up in the events at the end of the year, make sure to keep an eye out for these rewards during the Halloween and winter events. The last category of items we'll be looking at today are Age Up items, the Renovation Kit and 1-Up Kit. Renovation kits take any special building and change its age to your current age. This often increases the productions and boosts of that building. These require 30 fragments, and there's a decent pool of buildings to choose from. Far and away, I'd recommend the Sacred Cheese of Silence for these fragments. They don't need an Ascended kit to produce the fragments and are easy to squeeze in with your roads. Similarly to renovation kits, 1-Up kits increase a building's age, but these only move a building up a single age. While that may sound worse, you may want to have some of these on hand to keep some buildings in the previous age. This is very useful for things like mini challenges that ask for previous age units. You'll need 30 fragments to assemble these items. The Sacred Tree of Vitality obliterates every other building in per tile efficiency, made even better with it being only 1 by 1. Even if the St. Patrick's Day event isn't running, you can get buildings producing fragments of 1-Up kits across a wide variety of events throughout the year. While that finishes it off for the list of all important items you should be producing fragments for in your city, there's a little bit more to which buildings you should choose than just per tile efficiency for each item. Some buildings provide fragments of multiple items, making it useful to have them just for slow production of many items over time. The Regal Squirrel Hall is a great example of this, providing fragments of 5 of the 8 items discussed in this video. It's not the best building per tile for any of those items, it's not even close. However, it can be extremely handy to have one building that can cover such a wide range of useful items. The other one that is really worth going for in my book is the Emberfang Totem. The normal one, not the Ascended one. You get finished special production items, 1-Up kits, and self-aid kits, which is a very potent combination when it also happens to be the most efficient building per tile for producing finished special production items that is itself produced by another building. In this case, the Fjordstorm Harbor. The Ascended version does swap the 1-Up kits and self-aid kits for renovation and mass self-aid kits, but it comes at the cost of losing the finished special production fragments. Once you do start having a lot of the items I've talked about here today, you may want an easy way to access them in your inventory. Luckily, there is a button for that. If you toggle the box at the top right of the inventory, you can click checkboxes on items that you want to favorite. This puts those at the start of your inventory, making them a lot faster to access. I've got 5 favorites, including the finished production items, aid kits, and store building items, as those are the ones that I tend to use the most. That about wraps it up for this video, so please let me know what your favorite buildings are for each item down in the comments below. If any new buildings are added that are better, feel free to shout them out. Join my Discord server, the link is in the description if you want to chat about the game with your fellow players, and as always, I'll see you all next time.